That shit threw me. Yes, sir.
Where were you born?
Cripple Bush, New York. It's on the Hudson River on the west side.
Where are your parents born?
My father was born in Hiroshima, Japan, and my mother was born in New Britain, Connecticut.
Where did you learn to draw?
Where did I learn to draw?
Yeah.
Actually, I was never aware of drawing, except that every now and then, I remember in grade school, the teacher would take one of my, you know how kids draw, and take one of the drawings and put it up and say, gee, that's kind of nice, that's interesting drawing. Look at this, the children, what Bob did. But I never gave it a second thought. And then one Christmas, we were working with clay and I made a Santa Claus. But the truth is, the teacher fudged it. You know, that's still in my mind. And they thought it was so wonderful. But I remember the teacher just, you know, after I went through work, she went like this a couple of times with her thumbs. And that made it. They thought that I could draw so well that they wanted me to draw the school. And this was a whole Italian section. The school was like 90% Italian. And this friend of mine said, a couple of people have told me this when I see them. You know, I always remember you when you were out on the lawn drawing the school. That's why you're such a good artist. You were a good artist way back then. But I never even gave it a second thought. Then when I went to high school, just to get out of studies, I used to take 2 art classes a day in the art room. And that's where the art teacher used to have a special cabinet where she had all the good brushes. She never gave to the other kids. And as soon as I came in, if I was doing a still life that she had set up, she'd always go like this, and she'd go into the cabinet, take a couple good brushes out, and let me use them. And when I got through with them and washed them, she put them back in. So when I became a senior, she sold one of my watercolors to the library for $10. I mean, shit, that was a lot. It was almost a third of a month's rent. I remember saying to her, $10? She said, oh yes, don't ever sell yourself cheap with art, she said. So then I sold another one before the year was out. When I was going to graduate, she had a little brochure and it said, win an art scholarship. She said, maybe you ought to try out for this. So I really wasn't that interested, but I had nowhere else to go. So I had to go down to the city, and I went. It was at 58th Street and Lexington Avenue, right opposite Bloomingdale's, on the 10th floor. I went up there with the application, and they said, okay, you go in this big room, and they had a model there. This model had clothes on, though. So I won a scholarship for 1 year.
What was the scholarship worth?
$250.
That's pretty good. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Listen to him. A decent meal. Say 4 people went.
Yeah.
It would cost you $200, wouldn't it?
Probably.
Sure. And this was a year's tuition.
But $250 was like a month's salary for a lot of people.
Yes. Right.
So where'd you go? What was the scholarship?
It was in American School of Design, which was on the 10th floor, and it overlooked Lexington Avenue. We used to make these big paper airplanes and fly them out. And you see them going down like this, and the cop is down there directing traffic, and this thing is hovering right over us.
Any of the guys that you were at school with, did you...
Okay, here's what happened.
Okay.
So then I won a scholarship for another year. So I got a call, just the beginning of the second year, from Tex Blaisdell. He used to do Orphan Annie and a lot of other crap. And he was about 6'6", and he was really a character. And he was from Texas. You know, had a Texas accent. And I got a call from him, and he said, Bob, we need help down here. Do you want a job? Grab some samples, get down to 42nd Street and Tudor City. I immediately grabbed some samples, and I got in the elevator, went down, and I ran all the way down to 42nd Street, to Tudor City. And it was Bill Eisner's studio. And that's how I started in the business. Bill Eisner hired me right there and then, because he was running a sweatshop, this guy. You know, they think he's an angel now. You ever hear, I mean, when you listen to that crap, were you there?
How many witnesses around?
What, to show that he's running a sweatshop?
Yeah.
Well, Tex is dead. Chuck Cadera's dead.
Yeah.
Bob Powell's dead.
Yeah.
Dave Burke is dead.
Yeah.
And, well, Bill's dead now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even be saying that if he was still alive.
So who was there when you started working?
Bob Powell, Tex, Chuck Cadera, Nick Viscardi. He's now Nick Cardy. And he pulled that shit that they're prejudiced against Italians.
So he wanted to change his name because it was shorter.
Quite, Italian's the most popular group in this country.
So how was the shop set up? I mean, physically.
Physically? Well, Bill had a room, say, this big, like this. And then there was a door. The bathroom was over here, so in order to go to the bathroom, you had to come in here. Bill had his desk over there, so come in like this, and you have to go in there. The next room was half the size of this. And that's where we were all in that small room.
How many drawing tables?
One, Dave Burke's, mine, Nick Viscardi, Bob Powell, Tex, Chuck Cadera. Probably was the next one there too, in case somebody had to come in and rush or something, do some rush work.
Did you get along with everyone?
I got along fine.
Yeah.
Sure.
Did you socialize with any of those guys?
With Tex, went to Tex's wedding. I really didn't talk much with Chuck, but Chuck was always behind me. He sat behind me, and he was always swearing. That fucking, he was always calling Bill that fucking son of a bitch. He really hated him. And then when Bill finally, after a month or so, came in one day and he said, you know, you guys aren't pushing enough stuff out. And he said, from here on, he had a bunch of paper in his hand. There were worksheets. Put one on each desk. And he had to, and they said, and then you'd have to fill in what you did at the end of the day, how many pages you turned down, what time you arrived, the time you quit, how much time you took off for lunch. It's a sweatshop. Whenever you get a group of people and the teacher leaves and one of them is appointed to be the, what do you used to call it?
Room monitor.
Room monitor, that's it. While she's gone. And then as soon as she closes the door, goes out, the room monitor stands up and says, okay, you guys, I don't want any nonsense. And this was Bob Powell. Bill Eisner used to leave him in charge when he went out. As soon as Bill went out the door, Powell would get up. All right, you fucking guys, now get working. I don't want any crap going on. And I'm not kidding. And he meant it. And I was just hired practically. And I remember when I was there a couple of weeks, some guy came to the door, a messenger, and he had a big package. And I was sitting like this, and Paul is over with it. So I said to Bob, Bob, there's a package there. You want to take a look at it? He said, why the hell don't you go over there, pick that package up, bring it in here, and open it up? That's what I call a prick. Don't ask me another question. No, but I hate this when somebody in authority tries to push somebody down that's below them. It's called humiliation.
Abuse. Yeah,
abuse. You know, suddenly say I was in the driver's seat, you worked for me, and I got real nasty. You wouldn't like that.
Do you think that Eisner knew that Powell was like that?
Oh, sure.
So
Eisner was a real bright guy. He knew that. Did you ever see those drawings that, even back then, the drawings used to have that little black sidekick?
Yeah.
What an insult. You talk about racial profiling? That little guy with the big inner tube mouth with just a little hole in the middle, and those big eyes with, I mean, imagine that running in a newspaper. Did
you draw mostly quality books?
Yeah. Well, that's all Eisner did.
Quality?
Sure. No, he didn't necessarily do quality. He worked for Quality Comics, yeah. And they weren't necessarily quality.
So did you do pencil ink?
Just penciling.
Who inked your stuff?
I don't know.
Where'd it go after you finished it?
And they probably got some schmuck to ink it.
Who lettered it?
I'm not sure.
Ben Oda.
No, I don't think Ben Oda did.
Was it Ken Watanabe? Who was it, Ken Watanabe?
Irving Watanabe.
Irving Watanabe.
That's not, Irving wasn't his real name.
Was it?
Yeah. He changed it to Irving Watanabe.
How come letters were Japanese?
I think, in my own personal feeling would be, these guys had some artistic talent, but it didn't fit American style art. So they had a good hand, and they found that they were good at lettering. They were neat, they could work long hours, and they could make a living. I think that's what it was.
Do you think like training from printmakers and that kind of thing?
Well, you know, with all this comic lettering, they had to have a certain style to it. You know, and a lot of the letterers who forced it just thought it had to be very neat. Didn't have the zip like. But these guys quickly attained that traditional comic lettering. And also, they worked long hours. Well, Jesus, I mean, Oda, when I used to deliver the work to Oda in New Jersey, no matter when I brought it, he looked like he'd been up all night. And I think he was. And then I once met him in New York. He had this big briefcase loaded with comics.
He did tons and tons of stuff.
Tons and tons. I mean, and he
I met Ben. I never
Did
met
you?
him.
You
Yeah.
met him?
He was lettering
Harry and the Pirates. I
Little
mean,
Flash
shit.
Gordon. When Al Williamson did the book for Kingfish.
Oh, yeah.
Did you find that working in a studio environment and the pressure of deadlines made you draw a lot more and get better in your kind of
Made me get worse.
in your practice?
What Bill Eisner taught me was to do fast work and cut every corner you could possibly cut. Before I went to work with Bill Eisner, I used to do fairly careful drawings. And my life drawings were quite good. Now you go to a comic thing, to a guy like Eisner's shop, and he wants you to grind out 4 pages of pencils a day. And each panel is full of figures, and you can't use any shading or anything because it's harsh black and white. It was really tough. So then you end up sort of cartooning this stuff. Just like even today, his stuff. When you see the spirit in the suit, there's really no body underneath that. Or not the proper body anyway. It's all tricks like, style.
Did you do 4 pages a day, pencils?
Oh yeah, I did, sure.
I mean, do you get paid by the page or by the day?
Well, in the very beginning, I didn't really know how to even start with it. And Tex would come down and he'd quickly lay it out. And he was drawing like Eisner too then. You know, he'd just go head here, 2 figures here, the guy punching another guy here, and he'd make like almost like stick figures. So he sort of laid it out for me. Well, I could take it from there then, because I have enough confidence to know the text told me this is good enough layout to start with. Then Eisner, I remember that after the first couple of days came in, he said, "What the hell kind of shit is this?" Something like that. You can't, you gotta, I think he threatened me actually. He said, "You gotta get on the ball now and start doing better stuff than this."
Did he know Tex laid it out?
He didn't know Tex laid it out. But Tex laid it out in 10 minutes or something.
How long did you work there?
4 months, I think. Harry Lucy called me. He was doing Hangman. He said, "I heard that you're working at Eisner's studio. I'm in a real jam. 15 pages to turn out. You think you could help me?" So I met him. I don't know where the hell I met him, over in Times Square or something. He had some kind of a studio up in one of those crummy buildings where they used to piss in the sink because there was no toilet in it. And we were both smoking up a storm. He used to throw the cigarette butts and he had like a quart jar, a mayonnaise jar. It filled right to the top with cigarette butts. Because they always had some water in there and would douse it out when you threw it in there.
Who else was in the shop?
I was just a Harry Lucy, and he had some other guy who was to come in once in a while. He was a guy who did Pope covers or something. I can't remember who he was.
So how'd you like working on those characters? Does it make any difference to you?
Yeah.
Did he give you more time to finish?
Yeah, Harry was good. Yeah, well, yeah. And between the two of us, we worked together, and I learned things from him.
Was it the first time you got a chance to do covers?
I think so. Harry had a whole morgue of swipes. A lot of these guys, they can't work without the swipes. Old Alex Raymond swipes. So every time Hangman was doing something, he'd pull it right out of the Alex Raymonds, and we'd take Flash Gordon and just change it, put the costume on him.
Is that when you started to realize that some artists are better than others and some are...
Well, I tell you, deep down, I never wanted to do that. I always felt it was like cheating. I always felt, trying to put myself back then, I always felt that if I'm ever going to develop as an artist, I don't want to copy somebody else's work. And my work showed it was really shitty, because I was trying to be original.
But it got better over time.
Yeah, it got better, yeah. But still, I got away from trying to draw well-drawn figures. I was trying to use tricks to do it. So if you look at some of my early stuff, like bad Will Eisner stuff.
But isn't that true of everyone's stuff?
Yeah, to some degree, except in the old days, if you stuck to the tradition of working out, taking time enough to plan the composition and to draw the figures, maybe even draw the figures' bodies, then put the clothes on afterwards. That's what Alex Raymond used to do. So that when you saw Flash Gordon figures, the early ones, they were solid figures. They weren't too stylized.
When were you working on LJ?
I don't know when it was now. There was some point in there when I went in the Navy. I don't remember just when that was. I think I went in the Navy right after, maybe shortly after I left Eisner, and I worked for Harry Lucy a little bit, I think. I know that's when I went in the Navy, because when I got stationed in Floyd Bennett Field Air Base, they needed a station artist. And I signed up, and they heard that I drew cartoons. I had drawn Uncle Sam, which was one of the things I penciled for Bill Eisner. So they wanted me to make some posters of Uncle Sam fighting a whole bunch of Japs hanging all over him, you know, that kind of stuff. Little guys hanging on him with the big glasses. And, yeah, big buck teeth. And so I did that. And Uncle Sam was the big heroic thing. So it must have been shortly after I left. And when I got kicked out of there, I came out and then went back into business.
You got kicked out of?
Of the Navy.
Because?
Because I was an enemy alien. Because I was a Japanese father. I became the station artist. And also, then I used my art school training, and I could draw a very solid portrait, just like I'm looking at you now. If I had a pad with a good soft pencil, make a very accurate portrait of you in about 20 minutes. I did one officer. He sent it down to the photography room, and he made a lot of prints and sent it around. Next thing you know, another officer called me, and all day long I was going from officer to officer doing portraits. Even did the commander, who had 2 Marines outside his door. And I was telling Steve, these guys, they become humble. Here I am. This is before they knew what I was. And I'm just an apprentice seaman. The commander would say, oh, come on in. I sit there. Where should I sit? You know? I mean, normally he wouldn't even talk to you. He wouldn't even spit on you. And I'd say, well, it's all right, Commander. He said, well, do you want me this way? And how do you like a profile? And I'm just drawing, and this yeoman comes in. They carry the telegram on a dish. I see it. My name is on it. Seaman Fujitani. It has come to our attention that his father is a full-blooded Japanese. Therefore, that makes him an enemy alien. And they said, and it followed that I should be off the base by 3:00, whatever they used that term, that afternoon. That was only a couple hours later. Discharged and off the base because they were in imminent danger. How stupid these people are, aren't they? So the lieutenant looks at it. He says, hey, that's you. And I said, yeah. He said, oh, shit. He said something like that. He said, geez, I'm sorry, he said, about this. And he said, but geez, I mean, what can I do? So he said, well, I have to call the Master of Arms. He's like the Master of Arms, like the cop. And I knew the guy because I was the librarian. What the hell? I didn't know anything. I can't even read a book. And he came up with his guns. He said, Jesus, shit, I hate to do this. Said, okay, you got to get in front of me. I was either under arms then. And he marched me down to the basement, and he picked up another guy who had a rifle then. Like a rifle on one side, and this other guy with the pistol. And they had orders to take me to each officer, and they had to sign a release or something. So I went all the way around the base to different officers, and they would sign a release. And a lot of the guys, they really felt badly. So then they took me to the doctor, and then they said, okay, that was it. They took me out, put me in a car, drove me to Sand Street, which is a place with a lot of these cheap tailor shops where the sailors go to get these tailor-made suits they used to have in the old days, like this, and the big bell bottoms. They're not allowed to wear those, but they wear them when they're on leave. So they bought me a ugly brown suit for $4. They gave me $3 for train fare and so. And within 2 hours, I was in New Rochelle at Ruth's house. Or later, that's Ruth, my wife. That's it. I'm a civilian. Just like that. And never heard from anybody after that. Except I did hear from the draft board.
What did they say?
And just so happened at that time, since all this was a big emergency, Pearl Harbor and everything. So the head of the draft board was a former teacher of mine at the high school. It was all a voluntary thing. And guys, I still remember his name, Charlie Robinson. Said, Bob, I understand, I know what happened, and I feel badly, but... Oh, in the meantime, I had written a few letters to the Navy Department and complaining, and I got answered back, would you please stop writing? You're only hampering the war effort. So I could see some shit yeoman reading the letter, and he said, what the hell is this fucking Jap? And he writes that letter, and it was a pretty sharp letter. So anyway, Charlie Robinson called me and said, you know, I'll try to work on it, he said, and maybe I'll get you in the Army. Oh, he said, but it have to be an EC Army, he said. I said, if I can't go in a regular Army, I'm not going to any Army. He said, look, I don't blame you. Let's forget about the whole thing. Oh, the FBI came to the house. They go upstairs and they said, what's this chain hanging from the ceiling? And I said, and I was out in the little sun porch working. I said, that's for a pull-down ladder to the attic. Anybody should know that. You could see it. So they pull it down, you go up the steps, and I'm working out there, I don't know, working on Hangman or something, and I hear, hey! I said, what? Get up here! Just like that. The whole thing changed. And I went up there, and I said, and I went up the ladder, and I said, what's up? And Billy Burke was the cop, one of the detectives. He's on his knees, and he's looking at, he has all these maps spread out on the floor. And the other cop says, the other cop standing there like this. What's this? I said, it's just a game. A game? What kind of game is that? And then I told him about J.B. Conlon. So Billy Burke says, okay, Charlie, go down and get and check with J.B. So he goes downstairs and he called J.B. And they're talking down there, and then Charlie comes up. He said, he was right, Billy. J.B. had him do that. It's a game he's inventing or something. So then Billy said, Jesus, I'm sorry, Bob, but it did look bad. You got to admit that. These fucking guys. They went in the kitchen. They got a big bunch of carving knives my father had because he was a chef. And then we had a hatchet. A little hatchet he used to use to chop some kindling wood. Took that. They took the radio. Shotgun. They took that. I never got him back. So they go out the door and they said, hey, Bob, I'm never sorry. This is war. Jesus Christ.
Did you go back to work for Harry Lucy at that point?
I went directly to MLJ. Well, I mean, Harry would disappear every now and then. So MLJ knew I was doing it, and so I would just go down there and get it.
Who's your editor?
Harry Shorten. I used to think of him as the missing link between man and ape. He looked just like a gorilla. If he was covered with hair, you know, in the movies you see these fake gorillas, all he would need is the hair, and that's all. He'd be perfect.
Was he a good editor?
Yeah, well, a sample was this. I'd go bring the work in. He'd look at it like, that's good, great. And he said, Jesus, I was supposed to have another story for you. He said, but I don't have it. The writer never came through. So he said, you got 20 minutes? And I said, yeah, okay. He said, I'll get you a cup of coffee. Just wait a minute. Now let's see. And he started pacing up and down. I used to think he was a genius. They've been doing this for years. The Hangman would be chasing these guys on the roller coaster, and then they get up on the Ferris wheel, and they got all this stuff around there. Or we could have it in the zoo or something like that. And he would write it right there. I would take a pad and just block in the panels, and he'd say, now panel 1, we want the crooks doing such and such. And no balloons. And then he'd go on and describe what he wanted in each panel, and it'd take him about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and do a 9 pages story. No balloons. Just leave me room for small balloons, he'd say. We'll fill them in later. So they could always fill in the dialogue, because it was such crap.
You'd end up penciling and inking them?
Oh, yeah, with pencil and ink and bring it in. And he says, that's great. They hardly even look at it. That's great. Because anything was selling then.
So did you work there till the end of the year, end of the war?
I might have off and on, yeah. And then the comics sort of died, remember? There was a period there. And the only comics that were really going full blast was Charlie Biro. Crime does not pay, and those things were selling more than any magazines ever sold. And everybody else was dying. I called him up one day, said, come on up, and I went up there, and I started working for him.
Did you like doing crime books?
Yeah.
Was it better than doing, like, superhero stuff?
Man, I didn't give a shit what I did. Do it fast, make the money. What?
Did you have any influences as an artist when you were?
Oh, I mean, did anyone influence me?
Yeah.
Bill Eisner. Oh, then Lou Fine. Then the first time I met Lou Fine, he really blew me away. I thought, my God, this guy is, this is terrific stuff. Beautiful inking and all these graceful poses and all these unusual shots from shooting from the floor up and then shooting from the sky down.
Any stuff later on?
Well, I always liked like Kniff and those guys, but I always thought this, so many guys lived off Kniff in his style, and I just never would want to do that.
So how long did you work for Charlie?
Oh, I worked for him quite a while.
Did you write any stories?
Never wrote a story.
Who are the writers? Do you remember their name?
Bob Bernstein.
Bob Bernstein is a writer?
Oh, he wrote a lot of stuff. He called himself Bob Brent. He became a machine. He would do grinding. He'd work long hours.
Going from casting characters to just telling narrative stories make a difference?
Well, I kept trying to improve myself, but there was so much of it was superficial. Like I was telling you, I didn't spend much time penciling and try to get down to the simplest amount of penciling and get right to the brush. And because I always felt that this penciling was so much a waste of time because you erase it out anyway. So if you somehow could eliminate a lot of that and you save a lot of time, you make more money.
So in essence, you're drawing it twice.
When you pencil, if you pencil very careful. Guys that do very, very careful penciling, even making lines like this, and then you have to ink it. Well, you're doing it twice. You can't have perfect drawing when you're doing comic books because you're not getting enough money. If you want to know when I think I started doing my best work, when I was doing Flash Gordon, I had to do it fast. I discovered a technique. A friend of mine made me a light box by cutting a hole in my desk and putting a piece of plexiglass over it and putting a fluorescent light box underneath, which I could even move around. Had a little snap here to light it, where I would put the nice piece of Strathmore, finished sheet of paper on that, and put a piece of tissue over it, and I could just do anything I want on the tissue because I'm not blousing up the finished drawing paper. So this way I would do all my figuring with the tissue, and if it didn't work, I'd just crumple up tissue and put another one on. You get the design that you want. Now I put the tissue on, put the finished paper over the tissue, turn the light on, and it shines through the 2-ply Strathmore, and it really stimulates your mind because you get a blurred version of this black tissue. And sometimes I would ink directly over that. I just loosely ink it, so then I could take the brush afterwards and just drop in the blacks here and there where I had to figure out they should go. And it would satisfy me. I always thought I did the best work that way.
Doesn't leave you much room for mistakes, though, does it?
Well, if it made a mistake, I would just cut it out then and do the same thing on a piece of paper and paste it on there. I did that a lot of times.
How'd you end up going back to doing comics when you did this stuff for Gold Key?
Yeah, that's when I went to Dan Barry, who was doing Flash. Was living in Europe. He was slow as crap, Dan Barry. He labored with pencils. He called me up, or he sent me a letter. He was good at writing letters, and it was a very nice letter, and a P.S. on the end that I'm very seriously thinking of becoming a painter, and I would hope that if everything works out, you'll take over Flash Gordon. And I saw that, and I said, this is just what I would like to do. So he sent me some pencils. He wanted me to ink them. And these pencils were so finished, a spaceship with all the rivets. He had every rivet in the pencil, and with a little cast shadow on each rivet. Holy shit. You didn't really need to ink it. When I inked it, I couldn't get the pencil off. So you had to do exactly what he had. So then that didn't last very long, and then he said, he sent me another letter. Would I pencil and he would ink? So I did that a few times, and next thing you know, I get a letter, I'm coming east. So he came east, and he lived with me for 4 months. And Ruth gave him breakfast, gave him lunch, supper. He'd get dressed up, and he'd go in the city, and he'd come back. We'd pick him up at the station. So we did this for about 4 months. She treated him royally, but I must say that Dan and I got along perfectly. I found him to be a nice guy, kind of stimulating because he always had new ideas, and he was taking up painting. He was taking a painting class, and he was doing less and less. He didn't want to do much on Flash, so I was doing the whole thing, and he would just give me the script then.
How long did you guys work together?
Almost to the day that we parted, when I quit altogether. But then after 4 months, he moved out, went to New York, and started studying painting. And he used to send me the scripts. And then most of the time, he'd do it over the phone, because it was very simple stuff. Then he got married, and he moved up to Kent, Connecticut, and he used to do the same thing. And then the posters came along, when they were going to make a movie out of Flash Gordon. Do you remember that? A big Dino De Laurentiis. You know, he makes those big schlocky movies like... Yeah, it's big splash, this Flash Gordon revitalized. And Dan got the job to do the poster. Dan said, we're in. He got so excited. And I just was just as calm as I am now. I said, look, Dan, that's only a one-shot thing. No, it's going to lead to big things. You and I, he said, we're in the big time now. But we're going to have to set up a studio in New York, he said. I said, Dan, calm down. You can't do that. It's just another job. So he said, look, Dino told me, it's Dino now. And he used to be called Dino 2 or 3 times a day. So anyway, we got the poster. I found out with all my experience with him, he was very insecure. He didn't really have that much confidence in himself. So he said, Bob, he said, you know, I'm having trouble with painting. He said, would you make the layout? So I said, yeah, I'll make the layout. So I made a couple of rough layouts. And then and he came down, looked at it, and he said, geez, that's pretty good, but how are we both going to work on this? 2 guys can't make a painting. It's not like comics, it's full color painting. So we figured out we'd do it in 3 sections. Big centerpiece and 2 wings, and put it together. What do you call it, triptych or something? So I made a sketch, and he loved the sketch. So he said, do you think you could draw it up and do a finished drawing of it, and then I'll correct it where I want to? I said, sure. So I made a finished drawing on it on a big piece of tissue. He came down and he looked at it, and he said, it's going to be great. He said, you do the 2 end pieces, and I'll do the big centerpiece. We'll do it separately, then we can stick it together. You know, we do it on separate canvases. And we just put them together, and that's it. And we just paint over the scene. So he would be calling me 3 times a day when I'm working on mine. How's it coming? How's it coming? And we talk about this and that. A couple hours later, he'd call me. So finally he came down when I was finished. And he said, oh, that looks pretty good. I think we had it on 1 canvas, but I left him room there. And he said, I guess it's time for me to take it up home and do the centerpiece. And I said, okay, Dan, take it. And Ruth said, Dan, Bob's name going to go on this? Because he was kind of outspoken. And Dan said, well, it wouldn't look right, he said. I quickly said, look, I don't give a shit. I don't want my name on it. Took it home. 2 weeks went by. I never heard a word. So finally, I called him. I said, Dan, what the hell's happening? Well, he said, his whole attitude now changed. I don't know. He says, I'm having a little trouble with some of the detail. But I'll get it, he said. So then another week went by. I called him again. Dan, what's happening? He said, look, we got to talk. So I said, talk about what? He said, I've been busting my balls, he said. I have to go down to New York, and I've been taking out the secretary. That's costing me money. I had to buy 2 new suits, running into a lot of money. Somebody's got to pay for that. So I said, Dan, what do you want me? You want me to pay for it? He said, no, but I tell you what. He was saying that everything we do is 50-50 from here on. And I kept telling him, look, Dan, I just work for you. It's your strip. I don't want this 50-50 thing. I just want you to pay me what I want. No, I need you. He was saying everything's 50-50 because we're going to have to open a studio and this and that. But now suddenly he says, this is costing me a lot of money and somebody's got to pay for it. It's got to be 60-40. I said, Dan, you can have 100%, but I'm out of here. And then I got really hot. And I really overreacted because I sensed this was coming. And I knew this prick was going to do something like this. And then it always happens when people see money, they see big bucks or something. It's okay when there's not too much money involved. So, and then I started cursing him over the phone. And then he'd start cursing me back. We got just like 2 kids, and we got an argument over the phone. And And I finally said, now, you bastard, if you were, I'd kick the shit out of you. And he starts crying on the phone. And he hung up on me. Then he calls me back a little while later, and he's firing away. He's mad now. When the hell am I going to get you off my back? He said, I've been carrying you all these years, and you throw that kind of shit. That's the way it ended. It was kind of sad. And next thing, I never saw him again after that. And next thing I know, I heard he died. And I really felt badly because I liked Dan, and it shouldn't have ended that way. And I know I overreacted, but it just killed me when that crap came up about, just before that, we were like this 50-50.
Poster ever get done?
Poster got done, yeah.
He did the middle part?
Yeah, he didn't do so hot job either. And he really labored on it.
So you did Dr. Solar was the end of it for you?
I don't really remember now.
Early mid-60s?
Yeah, I suppose. I don't really remember when the end was.
Are you painting?
Yeah, I paint. I like to do it in the winter. I don't like to paint in the summer.
Too hot.
Too hot. Who wants to be sitting in the house painting?
When John Burke called up and wanted to do that recreation art, is that the first time you...
Did a recreation?
Yeah. I mean, the first time you did comic book art in a long time.
Yeah, I think so.
What'd you think?
It was fun because I painted it. And I didn't do it like regular comics. The letter he sent me, that he just loved my work. And he sent me a print of the cover he wanted recreated. So shit, that was duck soup. And I could do it almost the same and still improve a little bit here or there. And it was 1, 2, 3 for $1,000. When I sent it to him, he called me immediately. He said, I just got it. It's already on the wall, he said. I always sort of had an elitist attitude toward comics, which I regret. It probably was justified because a lot of comics are a lot of crap. And even on the paper they printed on this crap. But in the past couple of years, I've been following this contemporary art. And you want to see crap. It's outrageous, some of this stuff. And some of it's going for $1 million. This guy, Jean-Pierre Basquiat, or whatever his name, a graffiti artist. The kind of stuff he does we used to find in public bathrooms. Like this, and dick and balls, and telephone numbers, and suck this, and that kind of stuff. That's what he does. He doesn't even do it with paint. He does it with an oil crayon. And then he throws a little splash of paint on it, and it's done with, and then he just puts some ink on there. Then when you go into the museum, you see it hanging there in our prestigious Bruce Museum, which they call the Bruce, and it's hanging there. And down the corner is by Jean-Pierre Basquiat. He's a 27-year-old drug addict. And then, that little plaque they have to the left of painting when you go to the museum. And all these fancy people go read the plaque like this. And it gives something about the artist and about the painting. And they always name these paintings. And they always tell you the medium. It says oil crayon, some pastel, chalk. They don't say pencil, they say graphite and ink on canvas or on paper or something like that. That's even, they try to even make that sound like it's important. That's ridiculous. So after seeing all this crap, I said to Ruth one day, and I'm looking down on comics. Some of the stuff I did was great art compared to this. Even if you took a comic page, some of the comic pages, and you blew it up that big, and you used the big flashy colors, dramatic stuff, powerful stuff, really. It makes that contemporary art look sick. Oh, Jesus.
Jesus. I thought this was a restaurant. I haven't eaten anything yet.
We were just talking about a guy that worked in a shop named Viscardi, very similar to your name.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little short, fat guy.
Yeah.
I wasn't that thin.
No, he wasn't fat at all.
Well,
He was very trim.
I'm gonna say.
Actually, Nick was a. Oh, I shouldn't move. No. Nick was. I really looked to him for help, because Nick was like a veteran, because he was so much older than me.
Well, how old were you then?
Huh?
Well, how old are you now?
I'm 83.
How old are you now?
84.
Well, so
See?
you're a lot. Really, you're so much older than
He
you.
was, yeah. Well, I mean, he was in the business
Yeah,
at least.
he was a veteran of a year.
Veteran of a year, at least.
You know, when they ask me, is this being recorded?
No, that's all right.
I'm only kidding. Oh, it doesn't matter.
You got to take your clothes off.
Somebody asked me. Somebody asked me,
What?
what was your first sex? Who did you have sex with first?
That was part of your interview for Comic Book.
No, wait a minute. This
He's
is
making this up.
No,
yeah,
this
go
is
ahead.
the truth. And this guy said,
He's notorious
I
liar.
said, yeah, I said, my sex, my first sex was with an old lady. I said, an old lady? I says, yeah, she's about your interview. Oh, let me get
No,
the hell out
stay
of the way.
there. No.
You're okay, Nick.
You're okay, Nick.
We'll keep you out of the sun. We don't want you to wilt.